Alright guys, BLM here, back with a new video. In this video, we're finally back in Big Brother season. So here it's time to do a cast assessment for Big Brother 23. Now the way that this preseason has been handled is a bit differently than what we would expect from seasons 21 and before. Typically with those seasons we had a bevy of in-person interviews that would allow us to kind of gauge how a lot of these players interact with another person. However, at the time of this recording, where I'm recording this Friday morning, the day after the cast had come out, I haven't seen any in-person interviews and have only seen the bios and certain things found on these people's social medias. So really, I am running with less information here than I typically would, but it still should be fun here to run through the 16 new players for Big Brother 23. And obviously at the end, I'll talk about my winner pick for the season. But before we talk about the individual members of the cast, I feel like we should talk just in general about this cast. And I really like this cast based on what we see. I mean, again, like it's very tough for me to dislike a cast initially after it comes out. I mean, even BB21, I was thinking was going to be a good cast when we saw the bios from those people. But obviously, I was wrong. But I do really like this cast. Obviously, they did follow the 50% diversity mandate. Now, they pretty much barely did. From what I understand, it does look like they pretty much only hit that 50%, but I think you can definitely tell a different vibe with this cast than what you would typically see from older Big Brother seasons. I mean, there are very few people on this cast that feel like the generic archetypes that we would see every single season. Mind you, some of those people are still there, and we'll obviously talk about them later on, but I do feel like in general, this does feel like a very good diverse cast for the show. I know a lot of people are complaining that there's no real diversity in age, where a lot of the players are a bit younger and the oldest player is still only 40 years old. Obviously that is a complaint, as I would have preferred a much older cast. I do think typically older casts seem to play harder most of the time, but then we just saw BB22 where that wasn't the case. So, oh well. Overall, I'm very satisfied with how this cast turned out. And now let's jump into the actual cast assessment, talking about each of these 16 players. We're going to be running through them in alphabetical order, so let's start off with Alyssa, who, when I first saw her, I'll be honest, like I instantly thought of someone like an Annalise from Big Brother 21, which is obviously not a great sign, but then reading her bio, she definitely seems like a lot more of a fan. Then again, I believe Annalise was actually a fan coming into that season, but Alyssa seems like more so of one. Like, she does talk about how she's watched the show since BB11. She seems to know about the game, at least. Like, she talks about how winning the first HOH is very important, which is obviously like a prominent concept within the superfan community nowadays. She does have a gymnastics background. She talks about weightlifting. She seems to be physical enough to where she probably will do well in physical competitions. She does talk about how it's very hard for her to be fake, and I don't think that's obviously great, but then again, I feel like a lot of people say that in the bios, and then we really don't ever see that really come into effect on the show. She does talk about how Jessica is one of her favorite players, and to be honest, I could see that being a decent comparison for how she's going to play the game. I do expect her to be in a showman. She definitely is of the age where that would be a common thing to happen. Plus also, again, she talks about showmances in her bio quite a bit, talking about Jess and Cody and Jeff and Jordan. So I do expect her to be in a showmance. I am hoping that she can play well within that. I mean, I don't think showmances are the worst thing for someone's game. I know a lot of people obviously don't like showmances, but at the end of the day, it's like being in a showmance does give you a lot of leverage within the game. And if she is someone that is also capable enough outside of that to manage that leverage, I do feel like Alyssa has a lot of potential. So let's just move her up as a winner candidate. Next up, we have Azah, is I believe how you pronounce her name. I guess we'll see later on. But she, to me, feels so much like pretty much everything that like BB Twitter would want from a player. She's a person of color who seems very game savvy, is very anti-showmance, and seems to be a pretty big fan of the show. I mean, she mentions Keisha's birthday. She mentions that her favorite players are June and Allison. She does seem like a genuine fan. I mean, obviously, we know that Big Brother obviously gives these players seasons to watch in sequester, but again, are they giving people BB4 to watch? I feel like that's very unlikely. Now, one thing that I do see as a glaring hole here for me is the fact that she is so anti-showmance. Now, I understand the concept of not being in a showmance. However, to be as anti-showmance as she seems to be is not really a great sign. I don't think that typically works out for players to be instantly targeting the showmances early on in the season. Usually that showmance ends up getting the power to take out the person that is targeting them. And I do feel like because of that, I actually can see Azah being a relatively early boot, as being someone that is targeting a power couple that is within the core alliance. Like, she even mentions that her strategy to win the game is to spot the power players early and annihilate or divide them one by one. Like, to me, that isn't that great of a plan. Like, yes, it's a great plan from a TV standpoint. Obviously, we want to see these big power shifts every week. But from an actual player standpoint, I do think that makes her such a massive target if she is able to execute on this. And I will say that, like, despite me thinking that Azah, again, is probably going to be a great character on the show, is probably going to be a big player, I do think if she does play the way that her bio suggests, I do think that is not going to really work out for her. So because that, for me, Azah isn't really a winner candidate. Next up, we have Brent Champagne. And Brent here is one of those people, as I mentioned earlier, that feels like a typical Big Brother casting choice. Again, he is a 28-year-old, obviously good-looking guy. Seems to be very athletic, talks about hiking and fishing and traveling, talks about sports and working out, talks about how his athletic ability will bring him far into the game. He does seem like a figure that I could see coming off as like a Cody Calafiore sort of figure within the game. The question is, how much does he actually know the game? And I just don't think he knows the game well. And I think that's the main difference between him and Cody, where I think Cody very much understands the game. You can tell he understands the game, especially in his BB22 run. While I don't feel like Brent understands the game. I do think he is going to be someone in a showmance. I do think that could give him some power within the game. However, I don't really have any faith that he is going to be able to manage that power well when it comes to the end portions of the game. Like, I could see him being in a power position, largely due to a lot of other people wanting to use him as a meat shield, but I feel like it's very unlikely that he actually gets to the end of the game and wins. Like, I think he would need like a Jackson sort of run in order to do so, and winning a whole bunch of endgame comps, which, to be fair, he probably could do, but obviously that is not the most ideal situation to be in, to where you need to constantly win competitions in order to stay in the game. Really, I don't have much faith in Brent winning this season, though I do think he could have a deep run and be a pretty good competition person along the way, though I do think his lack of game knowledge is probably what's going to harm him. Next up, we have Brittany, Brittany is one of the people that I have seen the most from outside of the bios. Like, I have seen a lot of her TikTok videos of her dancing around, and it just seems so ridiculous to me. To be honest, in many ways, Brittany reminds me of kind of Bridget from BB18. Like, that was my initial impression. But I think if you mix Bridget with someone like a Marissa from Celebrity Big Brother 1, like, I feel like if you mix like those two characters together, I feel like that's where you get Brittany. She seems to be full of energy, someone that is going to be a bit much on the feeds. I think someone that will probably end up annoying me a lot, but someone that does also seem like a pretty nice person. Now, she does talk a lot about honor and being authentic, and I know that has caused a lot of comparisons to Christmas, which, again, I could see her being like the Christmas figure within her alliance as well. If she is within the main power structure, I do think she could be one of these people that tries to keep everyone together by bringing up honor and loyalty and that sort of thing. But really what I'm all getting to is the fact that I don't have much faith in her winning this season. I do feel like she is going to be one of these players that could potentially be dragged a long way and be taken out towards the end game. Like, I don't really see Brittany being that great at competitions, especially if competitions return to the way that they were during BB20 and 21, where they were very physical and very much benefited bigger people. Like, I don't think Brittany is going to really benefit there. But even outside of that, like, I don't really see Brittany being the type of player that is going to easily be able to get the respect from the jury. I feel like she is going to need to really play hard in order to get that. And to be honest, I don't really see Brittany doing that. Again, like, as I said, like, Brittany is someone that talks about honor and being authentic, and I don't think that is the type of player that is going to be able to pull off the moves that she needs to get respect from the jury. I could see her being a final 2 GOAT. I could see her being a pretty late boot in the season, but I don't really see her winning the game. Next up, we have Christian, and I do believe Christian was a last-second addition to the cast. From what I understand, there was another person named Garrett that was on there and got taken out and swapped out with Christian at the last second. And Christian, for me, comes off as a bit of a doofus in my eyes. Christian is someone that I think he is coming in pretty high on himself. I do feel like he seems like this kind of douchey younger guy, doesn't seem to have that much game knowledge, but seems to be pretty confident in his ability. I think the one thing that stood out to me that gave me this impression was in his fun facts about yourself. He mentions that he's only had one girlfriend. It's like, why is that a fun fact? Unless you're like expecting us to think you have had more? Again, it doesn't really rub me the right way there. I do feel like, to me, he just comes off as this douchey bro in terms of his bio. Again, like, I haven't seen anything from Christian outside of this. I don't know if like maybe he turns out to be the most mellow, calm guy in the world, but from what I'm seeing on his bio, it does seem like he is a recruit. He doesn't really know what he's talking about. He is mentioning that Jeff used the coup d'etat to backdoor Jessica, which obviously means Jesse, but like, I was like, I don't get if it was like just an intern messed something up, or that he just like didn't watch the season and then like was just trying to pretend like he did. Like, I don't really get it, but either way, Christian does not give me the greatest vibes here. Definitely not someone I am looking that forward to on the season. Next up, we have Christy, and Christy is someone that I really tried to like. I feel like Christy is someone that I would like to like. And to be honest, I don't dislike her from a more human standpoint, but as a player, I really just can't get behind her. I mean, I think really from reading her bio, so much of her bio screams out to me as someone that is going to be too loyal within the game, as someone that is probably going to be a bit of a follower within the game. She obviously talks about how she loves Derrick and Cody, which, I mean, most people said they love Derrick and Cody, but she talks about how she appreciated how loyal they were to each other, which obviously makes me think that she was very approving of the Cody move in BB16, which makes me think that she's going to pull off a move similar to that herself. Also, she mentions as her favorite past Big Brother moment that her favorite moment is when Haley told Bailey that she was the hacker and in turn like ruined her game to remain loyal. Again, like, none of this is good in my eyes. Like, I really don't have a good outlook on Christy as a player. Again, she seems like a really cool person. I feel like she is going to be a pretty interesting figure on the show, but as a player though, nothing here rubs me the right way, and I don't really have much faith in Christy moving forward. Next up, we have the first of the two Derricks. Again, why are there two Derricks on this cast? Who knows? But here we do have Derrick Frazier, who seems like a lot of fun. I mean, I really like Derrick as a character. I mean, from what we've seen of his like TikTok video, he seems like he's going to be a lot of fun. I feel like he's going to be a great confessionalist. I feel like he's going to be a great figure on the feeds. I feel like he's going to lead to a lot of fun. But as a player, I do have a lot of question marks about Derrick. And he seems like a really likable guy. I don't think he's going to have that much trouble early on in the game. I do feel like he's one of these people that is going to need to win out at the end to get to the end, though. And I don't have much faith in Derrick to do that. I do feel like Derrick is one of these people that, again, might get to the end portions of the game, but at that point, I think he's going to be a big target for being so likable that he's not going to be able to get to the end and win. Plus, also, I don't know how much game sense I'm really getting from Derrick in his bio. His bio is very bare bones. He does talk about how he's good at being a leader, which is not really the vibe I would get from him based on the little that I've seen from him outside the show. I don't know. I'm not super high on Derrick as a player. I do think he's going to be a great character, but as a player, I don't really see it in terms of his winning potential. Next up, we have the other Derrick Xiao, I think. Derrick X, whatever. And Derrick, for me, I have a tough time reading. I feel like Derrick's one of these people that I need to see how he is in person to truly assess him as a player. I do think he comes off as a fan. He does talk about Will and Boogie, which again, from what I understand, I don't believe seasons 2 or 7 are the seasons that are being shown to the players. So I do think that is a good sign. I do think he seems to understand the game. I think based on his bio, I do get the sense that, again, he is a fan. He does understand how he's supposed to maneuver through the game. I do question if he's actually going to be able to do it. He does seem like a really intelligent guy. Obviously, he's 24. He's a business owner. He talks about playing chess regularly. He is someone that I'm hoping I do really like on the show, but it's like based on his bio, I do worry that he can come off as a bit game body. So I do think at the end of the day, it's really going to come down to how he actually interacts with the other players, which is something that I just don't really have a great sense of. Again, if we did have the in-person interviews, I feel like I would be able to gauge how he's going to interact with people. But because we don't have those interviews, I don't feel super confident in making him a winner candidate for me personally. Next up, we have Brandon French, also known as Frenchie, who is one of the older people on the cast at 34, but he is a farmer. He is a super fan of the game. I do believe he is very involved in BB Twitter, and I personally have never heard of him, but I do know that he did make his rounds there, where from what I understand, he was a bit of a controversial figure. Again, I don't know much about it. I've just seen this offhand. But he does, again, seem like a really big fan of the show. From what I understand, he did apply for sequester. So he is his fan. And I do think through that, obviously, he is going to know the show pretty well. The question is, how much can he hide that? I do think he is coming into the season with the potential to be this Donnie-esque figure. And to be honest, probably in a better spot than Donnie, considering he is still younger than Donnie was. Plus also, I do feel like his story of being a farmer will track a bit more than Donnie's story did back in BB16. But even then, I do worry about how well he's going to fit into this cast. When I look at the overall cast here, he does stand out quite a bit. Plus also, I do worry that he's not going to be able to hide how much of a fan he is. Bio-wise, he takes every opportunity to make it clear how much of a fan he is. And I do feel like, based on the wacky personality that I get from him, I do have this sense that he's not going to be able to hide that. I do feel like if he is someone that can integrate himself within the majority, get a deep run, possibly win some comps at the end, I do think he is someone that could potentially win the game. But I do feel like there are so many other downsides for me that make it a bit tough for me to have him again as a winner candidate. Next up, we have Hannah, who is the youngest person on this cast, being 21. And Hannah is someone that I do think has a lot of potential, but I think also has a lot of downside as well. Now, Hannah, again, seems like one of the bigger fans on the cast. She is very open in her bio about how much of a gamer she is and how much she's thought about the strategy of the game. And all that is really great. However, I do have two pretty big downsides for her in my eyes. The first of which is the fact that she is so young. She is only 21 years old. Youngest person on this cast. I do feel like that is going to harm her in a way. I do think that is going to lead to some immaturity at points, which we do typically see from some of the younger players, which, I mean, to be fair, isn't necessarily a death sentence, but I do think it can lead to some moments where if this person had more life experience, they would be able to maneuver around the game a bit better. Again, I think someone like a Haley from BB20 is a big example of that. I think another thing is the fact that Hannah seems to be a very determined person. I mean, she is someone that graduated from college at 19. She is a 21-year-old graduate student. And to be honest, so much of this is screaming out to me like Ovi, BB21. And I really liked Ovi. I picked Ovi as my winner pick at BB21. But then I kind of realized the faults of that pick. And I do feel like Hannah has a lot of those similar faults, where I do feel like Hannah can have a lot of those same issues as Ovi and having trouble bonding with people. And with her being so game focused, it does really worry me that she is going to be called out relatively early for playing the game so hard. And Hannah is someone that I do really like. I am looking forward to seeing her playing the game, but I do have so many reservations about how young she is and how hard she seems to be playing the game to really make her a winner candidate for me. Next up, we have Kylan. And Kylan, again, seems to be another pretty big fan of the show. And if not a big fan, then at least someone that has done a lot of research on the show. Like, it does very much feel like he's watched at least a lot of the modern seasons of the show and talks about them pretty in-depthly in his bio. But really, that is the thing about his bio, is how in-depth his bio is. His bio is really long, easily the longest of the entire cast, where he goes very much in detail on a lot of his thought process coming into the season. He does mention that he's a long-time fan, but again, how big of a fan was he really? But Kylan is someone that I think instantly when I saw his photo and read his bio, my first impression was, this guy's going to be my winner pick. This is the type of person I typically do pick as my winner pick. This person that seems that they can be good at all three facets of the game. And I feel like Kylan is one of these people. The one downside for me from his bio is that he does seem to be thinking too much about these things. To me, it very much comes off as a Jed-esque bio. Jed from Big Brother Canada 9, who, to be fair, was my winner pick for BB Can 9, but was incorrectly my winner pick for BB Can 9. And that's kind of what this is screaming out to me as, though I do still really like Kylan. I do see a lot of potential in him, enough to put him forward as a potential winner candidate. Next up, we have Sarah, and I really like Sarah. I mean, Sarah seems like the type of person that I would get along with in real life. She seems like my type of person, this like forensic scientist, obviously this very intelligent person in that aspect, but also someone that is a bit quirky, someone that is seemingly a nice person, talks about cosplaying and manga and anime and that sort of stuff. And that's cool. I think I'm going to like her on the show. I just also have no real faith in her game ability, if I'm being honest. I mean, she does seem like a fan. She does seem like, again, a potential one of the bigger fans on the cast. But I do get the sense that she is going to come off as socially awkward on the season. And again, this is another one where I think having an in-person interview would very much be beneficial in assessing Sarah as a player. But because we don't have that, I am just going to assume that I don't really see her socially integrating within the house that well. Like, when I look at the overall landscape of the cast, it's like I can see her bonding with someone like a Kylan, who does seem like a nerdier figure on the cast. But it's like, outside of that, I don't really feel like she blends well in this cast. Like, I don't see any, like, immediate alliances for her. And I do feel like that is a bit of a worry. I do feel like she is a potential early boot due to being left outside of the power structure and being a more expendable person in the house. I do hope I'm wrong, as again, I really do like Sarah and I would like to see her do well. But at the end of the day, I don't have much faith in her, so she isn't a winner candidate for me. Next up, we have the oldest person in the cast, and that is Tiffany. And Tiffany seems fine. To be honest, she is another one of these people that, like, from her bio, I just got very little from her. She really just gives, like, one-sentence answers, doesn't really go too in detail on anything. She is a 40-year-old mother from Detroit. She's a phlebotomist, and she seems fine. But I really just don't get that much from her. All the seasons that she talks about are seasons that I'm pretty sure CBS gave them to watch. She talks about season 14, season 16. I really don't have a good sense of how much she knows the game, how she's going to approach the game. She does talk about how her strategy to win is to learn as much as she can about everyone else and also keeping her mouth shut. I think by her saying that she needs to keep her mouth shut, I think that does scream out to me that she might get in trouble for probably saying too much at points. But again, this is really reading deep into this because, like, again, there isn't much here in the bio. I really don't get much out of her bio. And through that, I don't really have much of an opinion on her, which makes it very tough to have her as a winner candidate. So for me, Tiffany, again, don't have much to say. Next up, we have Travis Long. And Travis is the most generic Big Brother pick here. I think, like, he's the type of person that no matter what the diversity mandate is, he's always going to be making a Big Brother cast. He does feel like the next coming of a Jackson, next coming of a Brent from BB20. He does feel like a similar archetype that we've seen many times in the past, of this kind of like douchey bro that has a bit of intelligence to him, but at the end of the day is still a bit of a douchey bro. But even beyond that, I have no faith in his game ability either. He does talk about how Brent and Winston is his favorite Big Brother duo, which again makes it seem like he hasn't watched that much Big Brother. Talks a lot about Brett. I mean, he talks about Brett's move to save himself and pin the vote on Rockstar. That's his favorite Big Brother moment. Again, it very much feels like he's only watched BB20. Realistically, though, Travis is one of these people that probably would go far on a normal season. Like, I do think he's one of these people that could go home early. I mean, he could definitely go home early as this big alpha douchey bro, but he could also make a decent run and then comp his way to the end, similar to how Jackson did. I really think it could go either way, but I am leaning towards the former, and I do think he'll probably end up being a relatively early boot. So again, not a winner candidate for me personally. Next up, we have Whitney Williams, a 30-year-old single mother, and she seems fine. I mean, to be honest, I feel like I got more from her through seeing her TikTok account than from her actual bio here. There is this pretty notable video out there of her being a gun connoisseur, and that's something. But from her bio, really, she talks so much about her children, talks about showmances, namely Jeff and Jordan and Jess and Cody, and also talks about how her favorite moment in Big Brother is watching Derrick's gameplay. I mean, to me, it really screams out to, I don't think she's watched much of the show outside of what she was told to watch. I don't get the sense that she is a fan of the show. She seems like a recruit, probably recruited from her TikTok account. Like, I don't really have that great of an opinion on her as a player. I do think there is potential for her to be a somewhat interesting character, kind of probably similar to like a Brittany from BB16, of this young, attractive mother, and I feel like she could get a similar arc here, but realistically, in terms of her game, I don't have that much faith in it. And now for the final cast member here, we do have Xavier, and I really like Xavier. I think from a pure bio standpoint, I mean, it does feel probably a bit too good. Again, kind of like a bit too perfect. But for me, there aren't that many glaring holes here. He is 27, kind of the perfect age to be playing Big Brother. He is an attorney. Again, probably can assume that he is pretty intelligent. He seems to be a really big fan of the game, to the point where he does mention that Chilltown is one of his favorite duos, but also mentions Rest in Peace, which means that he's at least caught up on the current events within the Big Brother world. He does mention Danielle Reyes within his bio, which again, I don't think they're showing the players BB3 or BB7. So again, I think that's a good sign that, again, he is a pretty big fan of the show. He does talk about how he's only going to win when he has to, how he's going to play socially. I have a very good sense of him being an all-around solid player. Now, again, I thought the same thing of like Devin from BB16 coming into that cast, so I could be entirely wrong, but everything from Xavier's bio here does seem to be pretty positive, with there not really being a glaring hole in my eyes. So because of that, he is definitely a winner candidate for me. So there we go. That is the entire cast of BB23. Now it's time to talk about my winner pick. And through the 16 people we talked about, there are 3 people that I decided to consider as possible winner candidates here. I did narrow it down to Alyssa, Kylan, and Xavier. Now, if we're going by who I would typically pick as a winner pick, it would narrow it down to Kylan and Xavier, largely because I do feel like Alyssa, while I do really like her and I do think she has potential within the game, I do think her archetype is one that very rarely wins Big Brother. We don't really see an Alyssa style of figure win the game. They usually make a deep run, but rarely get to the end. Even if they do, I don't think she would inherently have the respect to win. I think she would actually need to pull off some moves in order to do that. So because that, it does come down for me between Kylan and Xavier. And with this choice, I think I am going to rectify a mistake I made with BB Can 9, where in BB Can 9, I was so close to picking the winner there, where for me it was between Jed and Ty, where Ty had a lot more laid back of a bio, one that seemed very strong, but Jed's felt a lot more prepared, where Jed felt like he did a lot more research preseason and had a very in-depth bio about a lot of his thoughts on the game. And I think we're getting a similar situation here with Kylan and Xavier. And with that, I'm going to switch it up here, where I am going to pick Xavier as my winner pick. Where again, Kylan's bio very much screams out to me as a Jed-like bio, a very long-winded, very prepared, very in-depth assessment of how he looks at the game, but one that I feel like at the end of the day is probably a bit over-prepared, one that I do feel like leaves me with a lot more question marks than I do with Xavier's, which feels a lot more grounded. And really, even if we're not even factoring that in, I do feel like Xavier, just for me, comes off as the one that I have the least issues with out of the entire cast, where I feel like almost every single person on this cast has a massive glaring hole within their bio. I don't really have that with Xavier, but also the fact that Xavier, again, is someone that I think can be very good at all 3 facets of the game, and someone that seems to be a pretty likable figure as well. I feel pretty confident that Xavier is my winner pick here for BB23. But there we go. That is my cast assessment for Big Brother 23. Now, coverage for BB23 will be kind of similar to how it was in BB22. I will be doing a mid-season power ranking around the time that the jury phase starts. And obviously you can expect the standard season review and then player ranking after the season ends. Now, along with Big Brother here, I am also obviously covering other shows as well. Survivor South Africa is currently airing, and I will have a similar sort of structure for my coverage of that show. Plus also Australian Survivor is coming up pretty soon as well, so you can stay tuned for those. Obviously Survivor 41 comes at the end of the year. And also, because this is the start of Big Brother season, I feel like this is also a decent time to plug that, again, I have been streaming on Twitch at twitch.tv/The Marinian Review, where I've been doing some pretty late night streams, playing games pretty casually while talking about whatever the chat wants to talk about. And I do feel like during Big Brother season, if you want to hear my thoughts on what's going on in the live feeds and my more up-to-date thoughts on the season outside the videos I do on this channel, that's probably a good way to keep up with that. But for now, that is the video. That is my cast assessment for Big Brother 23. Thank you for watching.